In today's video, I'm making an abstract sculpture that's formed from layers of ultramarine blue with clear and orange spheres floating within each layer. On top of each blue layer will be a thin sprinkling of glass, with some of the clear spheres being a mix of glass and resin and others being glass marbles. There are lots of layers to cast, so let's get started. The first thing to do is make the orange spheres, which are formed using a spherical mould. I hot glue around the join in the mould as it tends to leak otherwise. I'm using this bright orange mica for the spheres as it stands out well against the ultramarine blue I'm using for the coloured layers. I'm just adding the hardener here, which I really should have done at the same time as the mica and saved myself the time of mixing twice. So I made two more spheres off camera, one larger and one smaller. The colour here is so vibrant they look almost edible. Here I'm making the small 20mm sphere that is just clear resin. I'm using a hypodermic needle to get the resin in as the opening is too small to pour it. The last sphere I have to make is one made of glass. Like spheres in other projects I've made, I'm going to form a sphere that has just a thin outer layer of glass, with the inside being clear resin. I do this by coating the inside of the mould with resin and then shaking it with crushed glass inside. I then wait for that to harden and fill it with resin. Here I'm allowing any excess resin to drip out over a couple of minutes. These are glass granules I'm using for the sphere, but I'll also be using them later for a layer of glass on top of the ultramarine blue. I'm shaking out any excess glass before filling with clear resin. So now all the components for the piece are made, it's time to assemble the mould, which is formed from pine boards wrapped in aluminium foil. Here I'm sealing the mould by running resin down all the edges and allowing it to harden. The ultramarine blue powder is very fine and can be difficult to mix without leaving clumps of unmixed powder. So to avoid this, I mix up a small concentrated amount that I then pour into the resin. I found this works pretty well. There are 4 layers of ultramarine blue in the piece, and so I'm mixing up a batch of coloured resin in one go so they all contain the same quantity of pigment. Because the glass sphere is partly suspended in the first layer of resin, I bond a length of wire to the top with UV resin so it can be hung. I will also do this for a couple of the orange spheres too, off camera. So I now pour the first blue layer and then rest the length of wire across the opening from which the glass sphere will be hung. With the blue layer hardened, I remove the support wire and the wire from the sphere, which has fortunately come away of its own accord during the curing. I'm now pouring a thin layer of resin which will bond a small and medium-sized clear glass marble. I will also sprinkle glass granules over the blue layer as well as around the glass sphere and marbles. So I'm trying to concentrate the glass granules around the spheres while avoiding getting it too close to the edges. With the glass layer hardened, I pour the first clear layer and then hang the large orange sphere in the same way I did the glass sphere. I think the vivid orange sphere really does look striking over the ultramarine background. So that's the first couple of layers poured, and I'm now pouring the second blue layer. From here on, it's just a matter of repeating the same process for the rest of the layers, which I'll show as a montage. So with all the casting complete, it's time to dismantle the mould and get our first proper look at the piece. There's lots of layers in this piece and they appear to have all turned out well. I'm really looking forward to seeing what it looks like when polished. you liked the final piece. I'd love to hear what you thought of it in the comments. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one.